Hello, my name is Denise, and I will be your host and presenter for today's presentation, How to Liberate from a Plantation Mindset. Now, before I get started, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like if you do find it useful and helpful, educational for you. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term plantation mindset, allow me to break that down for you. The mindset of an individual who inherently believes in their inferiority to other races, i.e. groups of people, especially those who are classified as white. The individual behaves consciously and subconsciously as inferior, placing their own beliefs substantially lower in value to appease their oppressors. Now, most of us will say, if only we had one great leader, maybe we could all unite. Or if only white people would end racism, everything would be okay. Or my favorite, racism does not exist, but reverse racism does. You see, our community has been divided into two main categories which dominate influence over the entire Pan-African community. In this presentation, I will highlight both categories, and I ask that you be honest with yourself to see where you may land, where you may fall in said categories. It is imperative for the liberation of our people as a whole around the globe, not just in America, that we be honest with ourselves and ask the difficult question, am I mentally colonized? There was a point in time where I believed that the worst for our people in America had passed with the abolishing of slavery, although it was still ongoing a century illegally, a century after that. However, I've come to realize that it is in fact the aftermath of slavery which has us living in our most divided, most colonized times of all. At least at one point, there was a time when the spirit of the African was unbreakable. But as you know, with colonization, centuries after centuries, we've allowed ourselves to remain colonized and mentally trapped in a plantation mindset. White supremacy, the false racial hierarchy, yes, began with white supremacy, but until we realize that it is us, you and I, who must end said supremacy, we must end said supremacy. Until we realize this, we will remain mentally colonized and trapped. You see, it isn't white supremacy that must grant us permission to unite as Black people around the globe, although that's what we would like to believe. Nor is it white supremacy that must grant us permission to view ourselves as valuable in society, intelligent in creation, or beautiful in complexion. That work begins with us. I am not here to tell you that the work is on the other, Christ, or the ancestor to liberate us. I am here to point out for you, lay out for you the roles you play and how you can begin eliminating the plantation mindset from your reality. First, in order to do so, you must be willing to recognize the hindrance from within. You must also be willing to recognize the behaviors and patterns which contribute to the narrative of a victimhood mentality, self-hate, and a defeatist state of mind. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. One of the ways we can begin liberating from the plantation mindset is by admitting to the fear that exists within. Fear of upsetting the system means fear of addressing racism. This could be systematic in the workplace, could be rules set in place to keep you in your place. It could range from large to minute, but our fear of white fragility must be addressed. Fear of losing a job means Benjamin always wins. The system knows how dependent we've become on Ben Franklin. This ties in closely with the fear of upsetting the system. As long as the system knows we'll stay silent for a paycheck, the system wins time and time again. Fear of one's own inadequacy. Am I good enough? If we can't overcome our individual fears, how can we overcome our collective fears? Fear of collective inadequacy, which has been suppressed, beaten into us physically and mentally. Are we capable of truly rebuilding our own kingdom and without the assistance of others? Are the lies of white supremacy actual truths? Fear of perception. We as individuals obsess over what others think. Naturally, fear of being perceived racist keeps us from calling out the system of racism, white supremacy, which we continue to operate under. Fear of retaliation, violence. You got to keep your head on the swivel. Better keep your head on the swivel. Bullied into submission. Fear of identity, fear of our African identity due to shame placed on our true birth home, courtesy of lies by white supremacy. Finally, fear of unity equals comfort where we remain divided. If we aren't actively working to unite, working to change the perception of our global existence on earth, we are in fact, comfortable where we remain. A human mind operating in comfort is a dying mind. Let's examine our behavior throughout history. The Emancipation Proclamation, 1865. We asked for work, immediately took on a gracious state of mind for our regained freedom, and began the pursuit of capitalism through white supremacy. We married our oppressors, did everything with a thank you, sir attitude. But what we failed to do, what could have shaped and built our freedom of strength and true independence, was to demand justice for the lives of our ancestors whose minds and souls were murdered due to colonialism. Jeez. We gave up the fight for 40 acres and a meal promised to our ancestors and were convinced by a large number that it was okay for America to break her promise. This began the evolution of our people seeking validation through America's Benjamin instead of fighting for the history of our humanity to be restored and rebuilt with total independence. Jim Crow, 1877 to 1964-68. We asked for equal rights, failing as a whole to believe that the right already existed inside of us, that it wasn't the White House who should govern us the right to be viewed as equals. Rather, instead, it was us who should have demanded, not just from the world, but from within, to walk head held high, arms linked in total union, courageous and strong, taking back our true identity away from white supremacy. Sharecropping, 1870s to the 1940s. We were silenced into a silent generation. Think of people such as May Louise Miller. Fear tethered from slavery remained within our community. The fear of white supremacy did not decrease, it transformed as capitalism advanced. The Tulsa Race Massacre, 1921, began the decrease of confidence, collective adequacy. Those who fought to rise into capitalism were off to a remarkable start considering where Black America descended from. Black Wall Street had over 600 Black businesses, 30 grocery stores, 21 churches, 21 restaurants, 2 movie theaters, schools, libraries, law offices, a hospital, a bank, a post office, a bus system. At one point in time during the height of segregation in the 20th century, there were over 500 or 500 hospitals, Black owned in the United States. Today, in 2024, only one Black-owned hospital remains, located in Washington, D.C., Howard University Medical Center. Redlining, 1930s to 1960s. We asked for fair housing. Again, more asking, not demanding. Emmett Till, We began asking for peace decade after decade until today we ask no justice, no peace. Malcolm X assassination, 1965. A decrease in hope began to set in. Fear of white supremacy became more prominent in the Black community. Fear of what they will do if we speak up and speak out. MLK assassination, 1968, rose a total loss of leadership. The mindset of Jesus is coming back, God will make it right, took over. We've become reliant on other to bring about justice. The few protests here or there, the few groups of us consisting of a dozen or less who fight, no reparations, no vote, do not dominate the dominant mindset of those living in a defeatist state of mind. We must be willing to acknowledge the truth in order to reevaluate our thinking to find liberation. Police brutality, 1830s to the present, slowly throughout time was birthed what I like to call the Generation Candace Owens. You know them when you see and hear them on the news, media, social, or otherwise. The individual who takes on the mind of the white supremacy, of white supremacy to appease, says they brought it onto themselves. They were involved in drugs. They shouldn't have flinched, moved, or breathed. White history continues to live on and dominate our present conditions. Both groups, the Black person molded to appease and the one born into fear, are suppressing the entire Pan African community from finding true liberation. We ask, yet don't demand what we are owed. And why don't we demand what we are owed? Because we've been conditioned on both ends to not fight for our ancestors, yet instead to forget them. America, however, never forgets her side of history. Generation Candace Owens versus the plantation Negro. On this slide, I will discuss two main types of Black people in America who contribute to our ongoing oppression around the globe. First, we'll start with Generation Candace Owens, the What Are We Doing to White People movement, who uses Black sympathy to score points with white fragility, eager to shout at the top of their lungs that racism does not exist, probably for them globally too. Black supremacy to white fragility. It's all in the title, as I said, the What Are We Doing to White People movement. Yet what has been done and what continues to be done to Black people does not warrant urgent debate. Instead, we've been gaslighted into believing we're playing the victim to a tune of an old and tired violin, a violin yet to be repaired. A broken promise to our ancestors lives on in the present as futile. However, what we are doing to white people who remain at the top of a false racial hierarchy they've created, well, that's cause for much concern. In America and other parts of the globe, Black people remain lost to true identity and true history, yet empathy for us remains a daunting task. Empathy in our community for our own remains a nuisance for this group, while our actions, effects from the causes of chattel slavery, remain judged, while those who benefit from our amnesia and divide go unpraised around the globe. The fact that you've convinced yourself that the pain of your ancestors should just simply remain in the past, pain living on in your veins today, acted out by current events, shows how little we view our community, ourselves, and our ancestors. We're the only group of people to give up fighting for our ancestors because a colonized mind is easily manipulated to please its manipulator. Racism does not exist. My favorite again. Generation Candace Owens, with much thanks to America's educational system, has bred for decades the Black American who once again finds empathy for white supremacy and demonizes those victimized by white supremacy. Somehow it's our fault. Slavery was a benefit because we do not know our true history and who we were beyond chattel slavery. To appease, no question asked, we agree slavery was a benefit, as we were uneducated apes just swinging on trees. Now we have purpose. Now we're educated because my master taught me everything I know. taught me how not to lie, how not to steal, taught me what books I can and cannot read. Factual. Check out the book bans. We operate in a government continuing to ensure our indefinite amnesia of whom we were and who we are. So, no, racism cannot exist if slavery was a benefit, if Master educated me, saved me from the wilds of Africa, right? Reparations don't apply to us. This group believes again and again to appease that they are not their ancestors, that was so long ago. Forget about it. Make America great again. This generation is so colonized that they've been clouded by the late great Benjamin to see that making America great never had anything to do with them, with us as Black people in America. They don't see that by putting their ancestors last, well, in this group's case, by not thinking about them at all, except for when white supremacy grants acknowledgement at a company event or MLK Day appears on the news, we will continue to be the curses of Ham, last on the false racial hierarchy system globally, consumers of the American dream and not the creators, building more than just one hospital in the United States, owning our own public transportation system, commercial airlines around the globe instead of private in parts of Africa. The list goes on. We have no idea how much it hurts the collective, appeasing white supremacy, all to obtain a 6 or 7 digit capital number. Slavery benefited Black America. I just spoke on this. We live in a country ensuring that as the silent generation and baby boomers phase out, it can build a generation of Black followers who support forgetting the atrocities of chattel slavery. Politics first. These are the people you see with the MAGA hats, American flags hanging off the bed of their trucks. They always put Benjamin above the collective. They pretend to care about the abortion laws, but it's only ever been about financial welfare, healthcare, taxes, business loans, etc. This group are probably more American than the average white American. But our educational system taught us to be this way. As children, before the start of school, every class, we placed our hands over our hearts, pledging allegiance to the flag, but never, never allegiance to one another. This is the greatest time in history. They will argue that the worst is behind us. Slavery was the worst, and today we're more free than we've ever been in history. While the entire Pan-African diaspora around the globe are more mentally colonized than ever before. I am just American. Their statuses of being an American is more prevalent, more valuable than holding American history accountable. They announce, I am American. I am not Black. I am not African. I was born in America, while failing to hear the shame of their association rolling off the tongue. No curiosity to discover their identity beyond slavery. Being an American, detached from one another, is how this group copes with the brutal past they wish so desperately to detach themselves from. Now, on to the plantation Negro, code switching. This group I like to call the plantation Negro. They believe they must code switch in order to fit in with white people. Code switching, altering behavior, i.e., accents, pitches, and tones to appear qualified, acceptable in a white dominant environment. Yeah. They code switch at work to be accepted, to fit in, blend in with white supremacy instead of demanding to be respected and accepted as they are. We've transformed ourselves enough with colonization and the brutality of the transatlantic slave trade. We continue to appease, conform, alter who we are in front of those who identify as white, playing into the hand of submissiveness. Some of us don't even realize we're doing it, like myself growing up. I had no idea just how much influence white supremacy had over me. If we must code switch, we must also understand the role we play in keeping the invisible racial hierarchy element alive, which says in order to appear educated and proper in front of white, even the mere thought of needing to appear educated and proper in front of in front of those who identify as white, continues to give white power over black, light over darkness. It says, if I must perform to appease and ease, I give power to a world non deserving of said power and ominence over me. You don't have to code switch in order to fit in with that company, with that potential boyfriend, girlfriend, that boss, etc. You've been convinced by racial hierarchy that you do, thus failing to dismantle the system of racism, white supremacy. Acceptance of and silence and oppression. You'll hear me speak often of defeat with this group. I've witnessed personally how a system meant to keep a people mentally colonized works by creating defeat within said person. Example, most of you watching, you go to work, you have a boss, and often, especially as Black people, face oppression in the workplace, even outside of the workplace, but it's only ever discussed within close circles. To confront it, holding it accountable, making it submissive to you, well, that's another story, isn't it? We will never receive reparations. Again, a defeatist state of mind. We've given up as a collective, as I've already stated. One half of us believes reparations aren't even owed. The other half doesn't even believe in our lifetime anyway that reparations will come, just as the generations before us have given up on the promise owed to our ancestors. The 40 acres and a mule, which is often now just used as a punchline in film and TV. We've allowed our history to become punchlines for entertainment. We've simply given up because we've only asked, yet we've never demanded what we were owed. America is the best nation on earth. Instead of making America great again, this group believes this is the greatest nation on the planet, conditioned to believe America is the greatest while never being held accountable for its past and present. The mindset of putting the title of America before the true African within. If America to you, as a Black person, is the greatest nation on earth, it is because you've given up on fighting for who you are, fighting for the truths of your people to be restored. You've accepted the material of great, but do not hold accountable America's true spirit concerning you as an indigenous, melanated person in America and around the globe. You've accepted the material America gives you, but don't demand what America owes you. You must reawaken your spirit in order to begin putting your ancestors, your people, before the title of a land. Jesus, the ancestors will avenge. You've heard the saying, Jesus is coming back. We don't know when, but he's returning. Or how many have seen the videos on Hurricane Milton referring to the ancestors destroying most of the sundown towns? The ancestors didn't like what was happening, so they took out the sundown towns. You've heard it. If not, check it out. It's the idea that someone else will do the work for us, that Jesus will come back one day and end racism, that the ancestors will curse those who have oppressed us. Well, Jesus already served his time on earth, and so have the ancestors. When will we do something to liberate ourselves as a whole? When will we hold racism in this country accountable as a whole? It is still the mind state, the mindset of defeat, which says there ain't nothing you can do. We must leave it up to God. Centuries are passing while our history is now being rewritten before our own eyes because we've been waiting for someone else to do the work. Your vote matters. This group will convince you, as they continue to convince themselves, that voting in a country yet to acknowledge your ancestors as intelligent will still somehow bring you retribution. You vote in a country that once again has not given your ancestors reparations. You vote all for the hopes that one day the first Black female will lead the land of those actually free, instead of encouraging your community to come together to build our own equal opportunity land or take half ownership of the land our ancestors built for free. Building a Black house next to the White House, where whenever our people are attacked by racism, white supremacy, the Black House will ensure that the White House be held accountable. We see division, but we're not in a hurry to unite. We find comfort where we remain divided. We're so distracted by America's Benjamin that we don't see the urgency in our need for unity, not just in America, but for the entire Pan African diaspora. I am just Native American. You've been so convinced. You've been so convinced to feel shame for the continent which your ancestors held that you run to identify as any and everything other than African. What instilled that shame into you? Who instilled that shame into you? Who taught you that beauty is in the eye of the beholder and beauty comes in the form of a pointed nose, not round? If we refuse to dissect our thinking, holding our own selves accountable, we'll never see just how mentally colonized we remain. In order to liberate, we must believe we deserve liberation. Capitalism is the main contributor to our constant fight for liberation. Those who don't fall under the category Generation C Owens or Plantation Negro fight independently for our liberation. They see beyond the plantation matrix, do not fall for the divide in politics, and understand oppression and racism, white supremacy at its core. When we choose not to fight for the true history of slavery to be taught, we display worldly a lack of collective self respect, honor to our ancestors, and a defeatist state of mind. We fall into a plantation mindset, which either says, I don't want no trouble, or we, in order to appease, agree with white supremacy and its lies. The problem is that humanity created dominance within the human race and now believes in said dominance. Relying on other to approve honor of our ancestors, our history is a repeat recipe for failure. We must choose honor above the American dollar. Remaining gaslighted, bullied, and feared into submission allows for us to remain last on a global false racial hierarchy we've yet to dismantle. Convince a people they aren't worth fighting for, it remains elementary to dominate and control them. We must understand the oppression that exists collectively in order to begin liberation globally. Accepting darkness as subpar to light, your goal is to seek the light, not the dark. Let not shine the heart ever to darkness. Be one with the greatest of all lights. Light is life, for without the great light, nothing could ever exist. Light rules over darkness. Light is more powerful than darkness. Yours, Billy Carson. Not me, Bill, your Billy Carson. That's your Billy Carson. When we, even those who are great researchers, historians, educators in the Black community, fail to see the irony of our own miseducation about darkness, we in fact remain trapped in the matrix. I challenge Billy Carson to practice what he preaches by remaining a true seeker of knowledge and wisdom, even if it means challenging his current thought processes that may be corrupt due to a false racial hierarchy clearly living on today. Where light extinguishes, darkness remains. Darkness never hides. Darkness understands it is the Alpha and Omega. Darkness was here before the beginning and will remain in the end. We must understand that even by putting light metaphorically above darkness, just as we do literally, consciously, subconsciously, we in fact remain dogmatic in our search for truth and wisdom beyond a colorless lens. Darkness and light, in the eyes of one wise, realizes that neither are the true definition of negative or positive. However, both are equally factually needed to sustain life. Imagine a world where the sun never sets, restless nights on earth, where even too much light could be detrimental to one's health. Waiting for white supremacy to end white supremacy. Too often, we as Black people wait for the United States government to end racism. We vote in hopes laws will change. We protest in hopes the heart of America will change. One thing we've never addressed with pure gravity is our undying acceptance of a government we continue to operate under. We've either been convinced our lives are subpar from generations of embedded brainwashing, or we operate from survival mode. I don't want to cause any problems. Slavery ended on day one for most, not all. And day two, we were breaking bread, transforming ourselves, proving ourselves to be exceptional for the White House. What we've yet to do is examine deeply the lives of those whose blood courses through our veins. We're the only people on the planet yet to receive reparations because majority of us, as I said, do not believe only to appease reparations are due. Reparations are grander than the form of printed Benjamins. Reparations is how we acknowledge those whose names remain unspoken, whose lives and deaths remain in vain by our acceptance of not even co piloting a government our ancestors built for free. By stepping out of the plantation mindset, we reignite the power from within. We're no longer fearful of the threat of loss to our economic, financial, or even social statuses. We understand the importance of finally putting ourselves and our ancestors first. When you walk in courage, pride, and wisdom, not even the most supremacist of them all can blow out your flame. So, how do I liberate from the plantation mindset? Acknowledgement. Acknowledge the role we play in keeping white supremacy alive. Acknowledge the reasons why we play the game to survive. Code switching. Is it human? Acknowledge our acceptance of an American government that does not fully include you as a Black person with equal partnership or say. Acknowledge the contentment for ongoing racism, not just in America, but around the globe due to our fears. Eliminate fear, eliminating fear. Eliminating fear of power, surrounding power. Our fears are mostly derived out of survival. Locate the fears attached to survival, retaliation, which hinders you from finding liberation. If speaking up and speaking out against what you believe in your heart to be wrong, but your fear of losing that job opportunity, even becoming homeless, keeps you silent, you must acknowledge the part you play in keeping white supremacy alive and be willing to dismantle that fear in order to build true liberation from within. Become empathy, becoming empathy. I'll use this past election. I've witnessed so much greed in the heart of America, which allowed empathy to escape the souls of many. To become empathy, we must first understand that all human beings, unless diagnosed otherwise, are capable of developing empathy. Concerning the Black community, the Black African diaspora, we must be willing to acknowledge the lack of empathy in our own hearts toward our own community. With the election, I witnessed men from the Black community mock and show little concern over their women's fears of the abortion laws. That's not how we become empathy and lead with love in our community. When you become empathy, you begin to feel not just for the entertainment in films and shows, but you begin to feel for your own community, leading you further away from the plantation mindset. Choosing self love. With choosing self love, you choose to dismantle the false racial hierarchy system and its racist theories attached with it. You begin to truly love your features and the features of all your reflections walking out in the world. You no longer see your reflection as lesser than white. You begin to put your needs of your community first instead of last or barely scribbling them down. You begin to fall in love with yourself anew, thus even further dismantling the plantation mindset. Challenging your reflection. By challenging your reflection, you catch yourself saying things like, ooh, I want me that baby with that good hair, light skin with that good hair. You must challenge your thoughts embedded from slavery, Jim Crow, it's etc., which continues to be passed down. This is a process, which is why the work must be done daily until you no longer need to change, until you no longer need to challenge your prejudiced thoughts of yourself and the diaspora. We all have continuous thoughts popping into our minds due to the environment we continue to live under. Changing your view of darkness. By changing your view of darkness, you begin to understand the manipulation used in English vocabulary in media surrounding your life. As I stated in a previous slide, attaching goodness and bad, negativity and positivity to light and darkness is the greatest trap of all. Racism began with misguided light, but will end in divine darkness. You must begin to see the beauty of darkness metaphorically and literally in order to decolonize the thinking that continues to be programmed into our consciousness until it can no longer attach itself to you. Adjusting your views of light. By adjusting your views of light, you no longer give light power to overshine darkness. You see your reflections in the world, which are you and me, if you're Black, Indigenous, as beautiful, not exceptional due to features tethered to light, but beautiful as Indigenous around the globe. We've been taught to worship the light, as was stated in a previous slide. Light is more powerful than darkness. Again, by Billy Carson. This isn't about choosing light over darkness or darkness over light. It's about developing the wisdom to understand the universe beyond the cognitive limitations placed by ego, control, and need for dominance. It's correcting the manipulation used to oppress those associated with a negative view painted in darkness. When we uphold such manipulation, when you place your trauma on the back burner in order to appease the light, how positive of a role model is light truly? Giving into the idea that light is superior and we must all strive to, if not become light by bleaching, then become light by association. This quite literally keeps us mentally colonized, rotting inside our own imprisoned plantations. Catering to excuses by not saying, well, I just don't have time for that. I've got the kids. I'm too busy. It's not my fight. I just want to relax, have a drink and a smoke. This is us choosing not to get involved, oftentimes because it's easier that way. Don't give excuses to not participate in the fight for your own liberation because it won't be you who suffers the most individually. Rather, it will continue to be the collective and our descendants who pay the price. Every day you can choose to put in the work. Gift your children with the examples of self love to ensure they won't grow up with a self hating image of themselves. As I said, this work must be done daily as we are still living in a system designed to void out darkness. Become change instead of waiting for change. We constantly say, one day things are going to change. One day Jesus will come back and make it all right. Instead of waiting for someone else to change our world, we must realize we have everything inside of us already to change our world. But together, as I said, waiting for white supremacy to end white supremacy is lazy thinking on our part. And I understand the disdain with the word lazy attached to our community. However, now is not the time to take offense and run from the truth, but instead accept the criticism which has held us all back from creating a colorful, equal world outside of white supremacy. We must stop waiting for someone else to save the day. One great leader. Everyone has the power within to lead in their own way, whether big or small. We must learn from our past that relying on one or two leaders to lead a people to freedom leaves us most vulnerable. We must be willing to rise above with great infestation of leadership to where no matter who must suddenly fall, another is right around the corner ready to continue the passing of the baton. Only we can truly change our world, but it starts with belief. We must believe we are worthy, deserving, and owed true liberation. Hold history present accountable. By holding history accountable, we hold the present accountable along with it. When majority of us have not fought for the true history of America, for our history in America to be taught, we say to each other and the rest of the world that darkness is in fact subpar to light. We say that our history, our ancestors are not worthy of remembering, that their lives and deaths were in vain. It isn't the ghosts of our ancestors who should fight for us, as people will claim they've done with these past hurricanes, as I said. Instead, it's you and I, still alive, who must demand truth to be taught, to demand reparations. However, as long as we are operating from the mind state of racial hierarchy, subconsciously and consciously believing that black falls on the bottom, worshiping light at the top, we mentally fail to liberate from a plantation mindset. Seek identity outside of supremacy. In order to truly liberate, we must find our identity outside of white supremacy. Who are we outside of the title American? Who are we outside of code switching, having to conform, celebrating the 4th of July, America's Liberation Day, 1776? African spirituality is often demonized, and we ourselves demonize what we don't fully know in order to appease. We must stop appeasing, learning to not care what others think is truly a journey for the Black Indigenous human being on this planet. Not caring what white supremacy thinks is detrimental to our mental health. We must learn who we are, love who we are, accept who we are outside of a world designed to entertain, appease, worship only one specific group of people around the globe. We must quite literally get back to our roots and be reborn outside of media's influences. Once you go through this rebirth, you'll find the thoughts you once had toward yourself, your community, no longer exist. Check manipulation. As you begin to emerge from your cocoon, born anew, white supremacy will challenge your thoughts, your fight, courage, and strength. You'll find yourself caught in the whirlwind of temper tantrums made to put you back in your place. You must be willing to catch the gaslighting, narcissism, passive aggression, etc., and not allow it to waver you in what you know to be the truth. Once you've eliminated fear of the power surrounding power, you no longer allow white supremacy to gaslight its way out of prejudice and racist acts, stating, "You're being dramatic, you're too sensitive. That happened so long ago, get over it." Or my favorite, "Racism in America is too difficult to talk about." Difficult for who? Anytime you begin to liberate yourself and others, you will be met with the reverse racism card. You must believe in your fight to heal, your right to remember, your right to truth, and never waver in your fight for that. Doing so places us back into the mindset, into a plantation mindset of fear. Have the conversation. By having the conversation about our history, America's full history, you acknowledge its importance and no longer kneel to a society which has you believing that by having the conversation, it does more harm than good. It's our suffering in silence which contributes to the ongoing mental distress, illness within the Black community. We must have the courage to speak, no matter whose reflection is staring back at us, even if it's our own, especially if it's our own. Ignoring the past doesn't make it disappear. It gives it permission to live on and repeat in the present and future. We must be willing to see our participation in keeping white supremacy alive in order to begin dismantling white supremacy. The work begins with us individually before collectively. Understand liberation in history. By understanding liberation in history, especially in America, we understand that liberation for the Black indigenous melanated person around the globe has yet to pass. Liberation is not just a piece of document from a courthouse or land, freeing the other from its hold. It's a mental freeing from that hold. While most would state we are free, independent, even go as far as to say we're living in our best, most freest times, when we've yet to fight for our history, which either remains stolen or buried, our identities, spirituality of the true African within, how can we truly be free when free will remains a one sided coin, forever siding with Lincoln, Jefferson, Washington, Franklin, and or the occasional Kennedy? Free will for many of us remains locked, as again, we'd like to believe liberation for the Black man on earth is equal to that of the white man on earth. We've been taught as Black people in America to celebrate the 4th of July, the day America found her independence in 1776. Yet most of us disconnect the fact that our ancestors were still being transported and sold as property nearly 100 years afterwards. Western influence over African spirituality and culture keeps the Black indigenous person globally, mentally, and physically locked in its chains. Liberation equals independence. Independence equals freedom. How are a people free when they remain dependent on the very same government who has stripped away their identity through history, still yet to amend their wrongdoings, but instead demand we kneel at their flag, which continues to dance in the wind over our pain and losses? When you truly understand liberation, you'll begin fighting independently and collectively for the liberation of all Black, Indigenous, melanated people, no matter where we exist around the globe. Getting off your knees. A famous quote I love to reference by Toni Morrison, who once said, "Why must I be on my knees in order for you to feel tall?" Whether realizing it or not, the worship of light globally leaves the majority with a colonized view of themselves. They say God is a jealous God. Man painted God white in most places around the globe, giving God multiple personalities and identities through color. When we treat one another with disdain, when we simply tolerate our own yet bend at the knee to light, it shows a warped view of humanity. We must ask ourselves why we go out of our way for white supremacy, but barely make way for each other. If the answer is money, a job, opportunity, the association by light complex, you must challenge your thoughts and question their legitimacy. It further proves how we operate from a plantation mindset. Take it to action. However, by taking it to action, you begin to consciously self-correct colonized thoughts and behaviors. You begin to subconsciously treat humanity with dignity and respect, and not by the basis of color and association to light. If you're at work talking to a coworker, one of your reflections out in the world, instead of flinching the instant you recognize light making its way toward you, hold on to that conversation a little bit longer. Don't allow the powers surrounding power to fool you into believing it holds any real power. Instead of offering courage, strength, and unity to our community, we warn each other to submit. Walk in caution. Keep your head on a swivel. When we are no longer operating from a plantation mindset, we are no longer feared into submission by ignorance, nor will we fear each other into submission. We've globally been submissive when we fail to unite as the indigenous people of this planet who would refuse to allow anyone to tell them where we can and cannot walk. Understand what the ancestors went through. Take a moment to close your eyes and put yourself in their shoes to see that their suffering was not just. For us to live in a world accepting our current circumstances, waiting for someone else to change it, we must become that change individually in order to see value in coming together collectively. A true leader will not lead you into submission, but will lead you into action, courage, and strength and unity. And finally, dethrone the stump. Whether you see yourself as Aboriginal, Native, Black, Indian, or you accept your African ancestry. In order to dethrone the stump, you must begin seeing the connection between us all around the globe. No matter the difference in cultures, languages spoken, we as indigenous melanated people are scientifically, spiritually connected. When we as Black people state that Africa has nothing to do with us, that I'm pure Indian, with a head full of tightly coiled hair like mine, you accept what white supremacy has left you with as your entire history. Our family tree has been cut down, stripped of its natural gold. And we've been left with the stump, crowning the stump as our entire history. You must begin reaching for the leaves in your family tree in order to fully elevate from the plantation mindset. Scientists will forever research and theorize on the beginning of time, the universe, our planet. There's importance in knowing where humanity began, understanding the theory of evolution. However, with us as Black people in America, we state that our beginning was America. That would be like a scientist saying that the universe began with the creation of Earth. Earth is 4 point something billion years old, 4.7 billion years old, and the universe is 13 point something billion years old. You see, that's would be like saying that. We must individually begin to question our acceptance of the last 400 pages of a 3,000 page book as our entire history. Accept the colonized thinking within, rewrite it in order to fully collectively take pride in who we have always been, the Alpha and Omega.